But champ, let's talk about last night's game between the Indiana Pacers and the Oklahoma City Thunder. I had the Oklahoma City Thunder winning the series. You had Indiana. Tyrese Halliburton struggled, and now it's being reported that he has a calf strain. He's gonna have an MRI. Jalen Williams of the Oklahoma City Thunder, boy, he put on a show last night. SGA got you his buckets. But champ, to me, Indiana, if they want any chance of winning this series, they got to cut down on the turnovers. They got to slow down the pace a little bit. And I'm kind of disappointed in Rick Carlisle, who I like a lot, who's a really good coach, a damn good coach, who's a champion himself. You got to cut down on the turnovers. You can't win the games when you're giving up 22 turnovers. 22 turnovers to Oklahoma City's 11 turnovers. Tyrese Halliburton, only 4 points, but 0 of 6 from the field, 0 of 4 from downtown. If the Pacers want any chance of winning this series, champ, they got to cut down on the turnovers, and Tyrese Halliburton is going to have to step up. Meanwhile, Jalen Williams, 40 points, 14 to 25 from the field, 3 of 5 from downtown, 9 of 12. I mean, he was efficient. He was attacking the basket. I got Oklahoma City winning this one, man. Are you still riding with the ship?
Hey, part of being a captain is you got to go down with the ship. I got to go down with the ship on the Indiana Pacers. And I believe as long as Rick Carlisle is the coach, I believe they have a chance in order to win. And to be honest with you, hey, they've been able to come back with insurmountable odds before. But, they got to hope that Tyrese Halliburton is going to be on the floor. They're going to have the home court advantage going into game 6. But, they have every capability in order to extend the series. But their hope lies upon Tyrese Halliburton and him not being out for that game. Now, I believe if he's injured enough, they need to pull him. Now, will that hinder their chances? Yes, it would. But it's better than him being a liability on the floor. And with Rick Carlisle being a championship coach, him being a champion himself with the 86 Celtics, one of the greatest teams of all time, if not the greatest team of all time, I believe that he can make the adjustments for his bench and rotational players in order to fill that void that Tyrese Halliburton would leave. And I believe this. If that's a big if, Tyrese Halliburton and the Indiana Pacers were to lose this series, regardless of the injury or not, there's going to be something against him. There's going to be something held against him because he was already voted most overrated. But you can best believe they're going to start holding against him and saying that, hey, if you knew you were hurt, why did you take yourself out of the game? Which that's a double-edged sword. It's kind of like, okay, I can take myself out of the game, but we're trying to win the world championship here. We're trying to win a world championship. So I think they're going to hold it against him. But like I said, it's a double-edged sword. Like I said, if I take myself out of the game, you're questioning my heart. If I stay in the game and don't perform up to par, then you're going to start questioning if I'm really, really hurt. Or is this just, press clippings that is just being put out just so it can negate my poor performance? We saw that happen. We saw that quote unquote happen. There's a lot of conspiracy theories around the LeBron James if he was really hurt during that course of that game of the first round. All of a sudden, here comes, the hamstring injury or whatever he had going on after the series. But, like I said, conspiracy theories would never die. As long as there's sports, as long as there's historic facts, there's always going to be conspiracy theories.
I think if I'm Tyrese Halliburton, I play with no regrets. Look at Terrell Owens. Perfect example. Remember how he played in the Super Bowl on one leg? People thought he was selfish for playing in the Super Bowl on one leg. But, hey, he played. And not only he played, he was great. 9 for $122. It's unfair for Tyrese Halliburton because if you sit him, if he decides not to play, you're questioning his heart. You're questioning how bad he wants it. But at the same time, a calf strain. Keep in mind, let's not forget Kevin Durant when he suffered the calf strain injury in the semifinals to the Houston Rockets, and he played in the NBA Finals. I believe it was Game 5 at Toronto. He got hurt, which led to the Achilles injury. So if you're Indiana, you want to jeopardize your future? No, you don't want to go on that same route. And plus, the window is open. If you're in the East, especially in the East, I still expect Indiana to still compete because with the Knicks, and maybe we'll talk about them later on in the show, maybe they still haven't addressed the head coach. You know, Orlando, and we'll definitely discuss this on the show. Orlando with the trade to get Desmond Bain by giving up 4 unprotected first round picks, Katavious Caldwell Pope, Cole Anthony, and I believe a first round swap. So
Yeah.
the window is still wide open for Indiana. And because they still have Pascal Siakam, who also has championship pedigree, who can also affect you with the defense, and with Rick Carlisle as the head coach, I still believe Indiana can still compete. But if Tyrese Halliburton wants to stay and wants to sit out to avoid further injury and the calf strain injury, because remember, I brought up the example with Kevin Durant. Sit him. If you don't want to jeopardize your future, you don't want to jeopardize this young man's future. His young man's future is pretty bright. So why risk that?
Long term, like I said, long term, why risk it? But like I said, this is the NBA Finals. So if he doesn't play, they're going to hold it against him. They're going to question his heart. If he does, then they're going to say, well, why do you take yourself, especially if he's not performing up to optimal performance. Now, we've seen a lot of players go in and have certain injuries and still play. And I hate to go back this far. Remember when Jerry West, he played in game 7 of the NBA Finals. He injected Novocaine into his leg so he could be able to play.
Right.
So, and then they had to carry him up the stairs in the Great Western Forum. So we've seen things happen before. We've seen it for the good and we've seen it for the bad. But it's really going to come down to what Tyrese Halliburton and the Indiana Pacers are looking at. And I agree with you 100%. The East is wide open next year, especially with Jason Tatum being hurt. And then on top of that, you don't know where the Philadelphia 76ers are going to be going, what direction they're going to be going, because they don't know whether they're coming or going at this point. They don't know, especially with Joel Embiid being hurt, you know, a lot of Paul George, that experiment not working. So there's the Giannis situation, them not knowing where he wants to go or he wants to stay. So there's a lot of, where's the West? Everybody is pretty much set at this moment. In the East, everybody is pretty much up in arms at this point. It's pretty much a lot of panic segue in the East at this point because nobody knows what's going to happen. You have the Giannis situation. You have a whole bunch. I mean, you have the New York Knicks and their coaching situation. You have a whole bunch of drama in the East that I don't believe outside of people like you, PSP, are talking about at this point. Because the thing is, there should be dozens of segments, even during the NBA Finals, about how the East is in straight up turmoil. I mean, the East is in turmoil right now. You have coaches being fired, you know, don't have a replacement. Giannis, who's arguably one of the greatest players in the league right about now, you don't know where he's going to be next year. And you have the Boston Celtics situation with Jason Tatum. You don't know if they're just going to break up this team and say, hey, let's just start over from scratch at a certain point due to Jason Tatum being out with that Achilles injury, and they don't know when he's going to be getting back. So there's a lot of drama in the air when it comes to the East, a lot of drama in the air. So, yeah, the East is pretty much wide open at this point. And it's just a question of who's going to take it. There's going to be other opportunities, but if you think of it like that as a competitor, well, there's going to be another opportunity next year, then that's not really competitive if you really want me to be honest with you. They're going to say, if you have that mentality this next year, then you're really not a competitor. So, yeah, it's going to be a lot of he's damned if he do it, he's damned if he don't at this point in time, that being Tyrese Halliburton. I would not want to be in that young man's situation right now.
But at the same time, for those who question his heart and stuff, how would you know? Because you're not the one dealing with the injury. He has. and as well as the team. And for those who want to say, well, he doesn't want to play because he doesn't want it bad enough, how would you know? To your point, nobody wants to be in his situation. But at the same time, if from an organizational standpoint, I don't want to jeopardize my future. I understand we're in the NBA finals, but do I really want to jeopardize my future? Do I, because if I do, I have to start back from scratch. And the East is wide open. So why do that? And plus, even though we went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, we went to the Eastern Conference Finals this year, but to me, no. I wouldn't if he's unhealthy, I wouldn't risk it because I don't want to suffer a catastrophic injury and I don't want to wish ill on the young man and for him to go through all that rehab and training. No, I don't want to do that. For those who want to say, well, you don't care, you don't want it bad enough, to hell with them. Because at the end of the, I'm sorry, to hell with them. Because again, you don't know you don't know how exactly someone feels. In the words of the late great Robin Williams, everyone is battling something you know nothing about.
Exactly. Like I said, I would not want to be in that young man's shoes right about now because there's already questions around Tyrese Halliburton as it is. There's questions all the way back to the
And
Olympics
plus,
being.
he's proven. He's
Yeah,
proved that he proved. I'm sorry to cut you off, Champ, but he's
that's okay.
proven. I mean, his peers voted him the most overrated player in the NBA. He's hit clutch shot after clutch shot for you. He helped the Indiana Pacers get back to the finals since 2000, back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals appearances, and plus, champ, you touched on this. Indiana, that is a great basketball state. We talk about Caitlin Clark a lot, and we're gonna touch on Caitlin Clark. We talk about Larry Bird, who is a native of Indiana. We talk about all the great things of Indiana with basketball. Only thing we talk about with football is just basically the Colts with Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck to a lesser extent. But Indiana, known for basketball, and it's great because you got two stars for the Pacers and the Fever in Caitlin Clark and Tyrese Halliburton. And the future looks bright for Indiana and in terms of market, in terms of the market. And it's great though, unfortunately, because we're talking about Indiana and Oklahoma City, two small market teams. Unfortunately, you mentioned this game one, the lowest ratings for game one, and I think it had to do with the market. But still, it's a very competitive series, really exciting. Sorry, it's not a big market like a New York, a Miami, and LA, but I'm still tuning in. And to see some of these young players, for me, if I'm Indiana, I would not risk it. I would not risk it, although I'm in the finals. But I have to wait to see what the MRI says. And if the doctor tells me no, do not risk it, I'm not going to risk it because I understand it's the finals, but at the same time, I don't want to start back from scratch because you never know if you're going to come back again.
No, you don't. You don't. And like I said, you don't want to risk it. If I'm a franchise player, if I'm the franchise myself, if I'm the owner, I'm the general manager, I'm the coach, sit down because I'm not sending you out there. And I will go to the press myself if I'm Rick Carlisle and that organization and say, we are sitting him down. He's not sitting himself down. We made him sit down.
We are sitting him down exactly because we don't want people. Because people are going to speculate, media, public, they're going to speculate and question Tyrese Halliburton's heart and whatever. Just look at his play overall, and you tell me he has quit in him.
No, he doesn't. And that's why I
Thank
truly believe if he is to sit, the organization needs to get out front and be more proactive than reactive and say, we're sitting him down. We are
exactly.
doing that. We didn't leave the choice within his hands. We're not doing any waivers. We're not doing anything. This is our franchise player. He's making an excess of $40 million a year, and this is
Yes.
our hope for a championship. This is our hope. We traded
And
to
if
get him here for a reason.
and
So
if God
if
forbid
that
he
happens,
gets
oh my bad, go
hurt,
ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, champ. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And yeah, God forbid he gets hurt. Remember all that heat that Tom Thibodeau took with Derrick Rose. Remember
You want
all the
to
heat.
you want to jeopardize that? No.
No.
Come on now.
Remember all of the heat that the Cleveland Cavaliers took in the NBA Finals when they sent Kyrie out there. Remember that? They sent David Blatt sent Kyrie out there and just was playing the hell out of him. And just was playing him and playing him and playing him on no load management, no anything. Kyrie ended up tearing his ACL in the finals. And darn well, that could have darn well cost, and that darn well cost, the Cleveland Cavaliers a chance of beating the Golden State Warriors. Because I truly believe if it was Kyrie out there and LeBron, rather than Matthew Dellavedova, it would have been a completely different story because they was already down a man because of Kevin Love, the Kevin Love injury. Remember the Kelly Oubre injury where he separated the shoulder on purpose. So they was already down a man already. Now, granted, Tristan Thompson was able to fall into that situation and get him a new contract with some of the numbers he put up in the finals of power forward to fill in for Kevin Love, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same level of production and intensity. So when you think about Derrick Rose and when you think about Kyrie Irving, if I am that organization, the Pacers, I'm getting in front of this and I'm saying, look, you sit your blank down. You're not going to go out there. We're going to depend on our rotational players and we're going to make the adjustment. If it goes to game 7, we'll talk. But until then, you sit down on that bench and leave the press and leave the media to us.
I also think that the players should step in and voice for Tyrese Halliburton just to defend him. You saw how the way because I know Champ, you covered the WNBA very well, and please go like and subscribe to Champ on TikTok and IG. Who was the WNBA player that came to Angel Reese's defense in the press conference?
Ariel Atkins.
You saw how the way she defended Angel Reese? Perhaps if the players defended Tyrese Halliburton, that could help out Tyrese Halliburton and perhaps takes the heat off of him for anyone to question whether how bad he wants it or not.
I think if the organization gets in front of it and says something and say that we have the final say, if they get in front of it and rather than, like I said, be more proactive than reactive, if they get in front of this and they say, hey, we're sitting Tyrese Halliburton down for this game because we don't want to risk further injury, I don't believe that the teammates coming to his aid would be necessary because as the owner, as the general manager, as the coach, you have the final say. You have the final say.
I get that, Champ, but at the same time, you know how sometimes are with the media. Sometimes they'll speculate, they'll jump to conclusions, and nowadays with journalists I'm sorry, Champ, we've had this discussions with other journalists, like with Stephen A. Smith. Now, if this were a Brian Windhorst, I'll give Brian Windhorst the benefit of the doubt because he has integrity. Stephen A. Smith, and I respect Stephen A. Smith's body of work, but overall lately.
Yeah, but when, like I said, when the owner and the team itself, the coach, the general manager, when the front office and the coaches, they are unified, it's kind of hard for you. And I hate to say this on the air, you really got to pull some out of your buttocks. If after the organization says something, the entire organization come out and say, we are sitting Tyrese Halliburton for this game 6. You really have to try to pull something out of your buttocks to go against that and question Tyrese Halliburton. Because it's kind of like if we were sitting, if the Sportspsp podcast was on a major network and they say, okay, for this week, we're going to change up the view. Okay, we have bosses now. We can't just dictate what happens on something. If my boss tells me, hey, you can't do this, then guess what? What am I going to say? We're not going to allow him to sign a waiver. We're not going to risk it. Guess what? We're going to sit him down for game 6. We'll reevaluate when and if we are at a game 7. Now, game 7 comes around. We'll see about what's going on. But game 6, hey, I need you to sit down. And like I said, it's not like they don't have the rotational players in order to match up against them.
They're too loaded.
Yes.
They're too loaded.
Yeah. Indiana's bench is loaded. So we've seen them do a lot of things. We've seen them outscore OKC's bench and rotational players as well. So guess what? If you can start up as much drama as you want to, but once the boss comes out and say this is what's going to happen, then guess what? I don't have a lot of choice in the matter. Remember the first two games in that Seattle the first three games in the Seattle Supersonic series and what happened with George Karl and Gary Payton, right? They didn't necessarily play him on the defensive end the way they were supposed to. They only wanted him to play on the offensive side until Gary Payton stepped in and said, blank that, you're not controlling this anymore. I'm playing both ways and I'm checking Jordan. So, and that was up until they put Scottie Pippen on Gary Payton, and then that really changed things. That's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. But yeah, once the boss comes out and say, once the overall boss and then the head coach, the general manager, and people like that start saying, this is our star player, he's not playing, then guess what? What can anybody else say? You can try to pull a story out of your behind if you want to, but guess what? You're not going to get very far.
Yeah, and again, that's what I'm also afraid that may happen, champ. So I don't have a problem with the people from the high up speaking, but I always feel like the players, nothing wrong with the players' defense. There's nothing wrong with the players' defense because when you have the players supporting you as well from a teammate standpoint, that makes you feel good. It makes you feel like people do appreciate you, your contributions, what you bring to the table. But I have no problem with the owner. The question is, will it happen if they decide to bench him? Should they? Yes. But I also think if the ownership or the high ups or the coaches are not going to do that, the players, I think they should say, hey, management made the decision, whether we like it or not. We have to respect it. And whatever happens, we'll go from there.
Yes, indeed. When you have that double tap to it, then guess what? Like I said, the press can try to pull as many stories out of their behind as they want to. But guess what? The players and the general managers and the owner, as well as the coach, said he's not playing. So, and like I said, if you had an asset like a Tyrese Halliburton in a small market where you're not necessarily getting stars every other day like these big markets are, would you go out here and play them? Blank, blank, no, you wouldn't.
There you go.